Welcome, welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So right off the bat, Golda, I think I had mentioned in a previous shiur, a previous lesson, that we had read about Hagar, and we had not. We had not.
I knew.
Yeah,
I wasn't gonna tell you anything
oh,
at this
you were
point, but
welcome to anyway. Yeah,
okay.
I.
That's okay. You had something set in your mind, and sometimes it's just easier just to let it go.
And then yesterday,
Figured you'd figure it out.
I'm
I wasn't gonna,
struggling to
huh?
remember. Yesterday, I was struggling to remember the year in which the second temple was destroyed, which was the year 70 of this era.
Hmm.
And I couldn't think of it. I could not
You know
think.
what? Too much. It's just too much stuff in your brain.
The hard drive is
Uh,
getting full. Okay,
yes,
well
and the
let's
paths are getting old.
Rabbi, you can get an external drive from Best Buy or
Yeah, if we could, that would be so
well,
sweet.
excuse me, but maybe you guys are my external drive in every sense of that word
Mhm.
drive.
Gotcha.
By the way, Golda and Gerard have replaced you and Bill Solomon for our trivia table.
Uh,
Unless you want to come into town.
it's a very, very sweet offer. All right, let's.
We're full up.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. So we are still reading this section about the Brit Bein Habatarim, the covenant of the pieces, and we have some very dramatic stuff that's coming up now. Vayhi Hashemesh Ba'a, right? And the sun was setting, or had set. The sun had set. Yes, the sun had set. V'alata haya, and there was darkness. There was darkness. The hine, and behold, I guess is how that's translated. Or it came to pass, or something like that. Rashi, I think, will communicate about that. Tanur Ashan, a oven of smoke, a smoky oven, the lapid esh, and a torch of fire, asher avar, which passed bein hagzarim ha'ela, between these pieces. So we had mentioned that this symbolized the divine presence making this covenant, that this covenant was being made between Abram and God. That's the point of this. So let's take a look at this. Vahi Hashemesh, right. As I was preparing this, I really liked the translation of Vahi as, and so it was, right? And so it was. I really liked that. But anyway, Vahi Hashemesh Ba, and so it was that the sun had set, etc. And he gives examples of this Vahi, right? And so it was. Kamor, and he gives Genesis chapter 42, Vahi Hem Merikim Sakehem, right? And so it was, that's how I'm translating it, as they were emptying their sacks. Remember, the brothers had left Egypt, and Joseph had told his servant to put their money back in their sacks, etc., right?
Here it says the reason they're doing this is that the gender doesn't agree, that Shemesh and Vayahi, that Shemesh is feminine and Vayahi
Yes.
is masculine.
Mm.
So they're giving examples of that specifically.
Lauren, that's very helpful. Thank you. Yeah,
And
because otherwise it should be Vatehi, right? But what's interesting here is the Vaihi, Haim, Merikim. Haim is the brothers, so that's masculine, and Ba'a is feminine. So yeah, go ahead.
But
Vayahi's
plural.
singular too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes,
It's
yes,
Vayu or
yes, that's right. Yes. So I think this is all helpful. Thank you for contributing that. Um, Let me just think if there was another point. Yeah, I mean, because Vatahi would be feminine, Vayhi, and so it was. But here it's masculine, right? Or maybe you're right. Go to the point that you're making, right? It should have said Vayihiyu. There it would be plural, right? In other words, that there's, so the point is, and thank you, because I did not realize this even as I was preparing this,
It's Shemesh is what we're talking about,
right,
which is plural. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's singular and feminine, right? And here it's here with the brothers where it's Vayhi, it also there it's they, right? So it's plural there. And then in Kings, second book of Kings, chapter 30, and here it is, Vayhi, again, singular, Haim Kovrim Ish. So they were bearing a man, is what that says, okay? So again, the Haim is plural. And so the question is, as you said, I did not pick that up, okay? Klomar. So here's the point. Vayhi davar zeh. And this matter took place. So that's why it's masculine and that's why it's singular, is what Rashi is explaining. But thank you, because I did not realize the problem that Rashi was really addressing here. Thank you. Okay. Hashemesh ba'ah, right? Let me make sure, it's very important, as you'll see. So no, exactly the opposite. Hashemesh ba'ah. So the point here is that sometimes this word is pronounced ba'a with the accent on the first syllable, and sometimes it's pronounced ba'a with the accent on the second syllable. And Rashi's going to tell us the difference that subtle distinction makes, all right? At any rate, ba'a, literally it means the son had come or came or something like that. And he says what that means is shak'ah, which means set. For alata or alata, let me make sure I got this pronounced correctly. Alata, right? Alata. For alata haya. And again, this word alata is not a common word at all. And it says chashach hayom, that the day darkened, the day became dark. Vehine tanur ashan, and behold, an oven of smoke, etc. So what is the significance of these particular items? Remez law, right? So he alluded to him, he hinted to him, Sheyiplu hamalchuyot ovdei gilulim v'gehinom. And the reason why, okay, so I'll translate it first, that the idolatrous kingdoms would fall into Gehinom, and that's the idea of the fire and the smoke and the stuff and the burning going on in the future. I'm trying to think. I've seen a wonderful interpretation of the burning in the afterlife as actually being a metaphor for the humiliation that one feels when one has to face the truth, that in that world, the world of truth, you can no longer try to lie your way out of a situation, and that the humiliation is the fact that, you know, that your face going red or you're feeling heat of humiliation is the heat involved there. So I guess it might be intense humiliation. Okay, so here we go with the ba'a, right? He says ta'amo lamala, that is to say, the accent is falling on the first, literally it means above, meaning this part of the word, right? The first syllable. L'chach hu mevu'ar, and for that reason, we have to explain it, sheba kfar. In other words, that the sun had already set. Okay, the idea, though, of course, it should be ba'a, which would be feminine, but the idea is that the sun had, or kvar means already, had already set. The im hayat ta'amor lamata, however, if the accent fell on the bottom, literally, right? So that's the last syllable, the aleph, in the aleph, right, of here, right? If it said ba'a, hayamavuar, it would be clear keshehi shokat, that we were talking about the sun was in the process of setting. So the ba'a means had already set, whereas ba'a means it's imperfect, it's not completed action. Ve'efshar lomar kain. But you cannot say this. You cannot interpret that ba'a as saying the sun was in the process of setting. Sharei kvar ketiv vahi hashemesh lavo, because earlier on we had said that the sun was it was in the process of setting. V'ha'avarat tanur ashan, and the passing through of the smoky oven, la'achar mikan, took place after it had set. Let me make sure. Yeah. Haita nimtza. So la'achar mikan haita, comma. There's no punctuation in here, so forgive me for my stumbling a little bit here, right? That the passing through of the smoky oven happened after this. Nimsa, so consequently, shekvar shak'ah, that the sun had already set. V'zeh chiluk b'chol teva lashon nekeva. So now Rashi is giving us a grammatical observation. He says this is the distinction in which occurs in every word where it's feminine, sheyesuda shtei otiot, whose root is two letters. Kamo, and he gives examples of roots of verbs that have two letters: ba, to come to arise, shav, which means to return here. Keshehatam lamala, when the accent falls on the first syllable, lashon avarhu. Okay, in that case, it is in the perfect tense, meaning past tense. It's completed action is what it's talking about. Kagon ze, like this example we just gave, ukagon v'Rachel ba'a, and it says, and Rachel came, right, or had come, had arrived. Kama alumati, my sheaf had arisen, had stood up, arose, had arisen. Hine shava yevemtech. So it says, this is where Naomi's saying to Ruth, your sister-in-law has already returned, has already gone back. First chapter of Ruth. Ukeshatam lamata, but when the accent falls on the last syllable, hu lashon hoveh. In other words, now we sometimes translate hoveh as present tense, but the point is it's not completed action. It's incomplete action. Davar shene'esa achshav, something that's taking place now. The holech, right? And continuous. Right? It's continuing to happen. Kamo ba'a im hatzon. This is again referring to Rachel, which she was arriving with the sheep. Ba'erev hi ba'a. So in the evening she would arrive. Was in the uva boker hi shava, right? This is an Esther, which we're referring. Yeah. So in other words, in the evening, the woman that he had picked, had selected, would come, and in the morning she would return. Okay, the process. Okay. So a little bit of every so often, as we know, Rashi will give us some grammatical information. All right. Bayomahu, on that day, Karat Hashem et Avram Brit Lemor. The Hashem established with Abraham a covenant, saying, quote, right? The Zar Acha, to your seed, Natati et haaretz hazot. So I have given, this is interesting, right? Because this sounds like it's completed action. I have given this land. Minahar Mitzrayim, from the river of Egypt, ad Hanahar Hagadol, up to the great river Nahar Prat, the Euphrates. So that area is what's referred to here. So, Lazar Acha, he says, to your seed I have given it. Amirato. So Rashi is is taking up the fact that this is past tense, and this land has not yet, it hasn't been given yet, but it's past tense, it's completed. And he makes the point, Amirato shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that when God says something, when he makes a statement, Ki'ilu hi asuya, it's as if it's already done. That when God makes these kind of promises, it's as true and valid as if it's already completed, already happened. Ad Hanahar Hagadol, Nahar Prat, up until the great river, the river Euphrates. Lefi Shehu Davuk LeEretz Yisrael, because this river is attached to the land of Israel. Korahu Gadol, or Korehu Gadol, it's referred to as great. In other words, its greatness is not the size of the river, but its location in that it's a border of the land of Israel. Afalpi Shehu Me'uchar Ba'arba'a Naharot, and even though this particular river is mentioned last of the 4 rivers Hayotzim Me'eden that emerge from Eden. Shine'emar, because it says V'ha'arevi'i hu Prat. It says the 4th river is Prat. So assuming that it's in order of size or magnitude or importance, you would think that, well, if it's magnitude, then Prat would be the smallest of them all. And he says, so why is it being called the great river? What's great about this river? Mashal Hediot, it follows a common saying, Eved Melech Melech, that the servant of a king is a king. That when you serve a king, you become, in a sense, a king. Another example, Hadbek la Shachvar, attach yourself to the captain, Vayishtachavu lecha, and they will bow down to you. So it's connection there. So, Et hakeni ve'et haknizi. So these are the nations that are going to be conquered, and that God is giving these nations over to the Jewish people, the descendants of Abraham, ve'et hakadmoni, and the Kadmonite. Let's see if there's any Rashi at this point. Yes. Okay. So the Kenite. And this is in Bereshit Rabbah, in that Midrash Bereshit Rabbah. Eser umot yeshkan, that if you count up all the nations that are mentioned here, you're going to come up with 10. So let's take a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there are 10 nations mentioned here. Okay. V'lo natan lahem ela shiv'a goyim. But in fact, there were only 7 nations that were given over to the Israelites when they took over the land of Canaan. So there were only 7, and here are mentioned 10 altogether. So v'hashlosha, and the 3 that are not included, that were not included, Edom, Moab, v'Ammon, and Ammon, v'hem kini knizi v'kadmoni, and they are referenced by a different name, but they had a name associated here. Okay, Atidim liyot Yerusha la'atid, in the future they would be an inheritance in the future. Okay, so they were destined, I suppose, as we say, Atidim. They were destined to be an inheritance in the future. Shinemar, as it states, Edom u'Moav mishloach yadam. So they will overpower Edom and Moav. Or uvnei Ammon mishmash ma'atam, and the children of Ammon will obey them. And this is a prophecy in Isaiah chapter 11. Okay, so we're going on with these other nations, right? Ve'et HaChiti, the Hittite, ve'et HaPrizi, the Perizzite, ve'et HaRephaim, and the Rephaim. Let's see if we've got a Rashi on the Rephaim, right there, the Rephaim. Eretz Og, this is the land of Og, Remember, Og was considered a giant, shene'emar ba, with regarding which it says in Deuteronomy 3, Hahu, I'm going to guess, is it Yikare or yeah, it must be. It is called, because it's passive voice, it is called the land of Rephaim. And Rephaim also was a reference to giants, Finishing up the sentence here, Ve'et ha'Emori, the Amorite, Ve'et ha'Knaani, the Canaanite, Ve'et ha'Girgashi, the Girgashite, Ve'et ha'Yevusi, and the Jebusite. So that's the end of this particular chapter. And of course, it's the basis on which the Jewish people have a relationship to the land of Israel. And of course, historically, the Jewish people lived there and have actually been a presence there ever since they were there, because even after the destruction of the Second Temple, there were still a few Jews living in that area, or Judeans, I suppose we would call them at the time. So we have, remember, the context is that this all started out with Abraham basically saying that what would be his reward and how could he have it, etc., and that he had no child of his own, right? He didn't have any child. So, and then we have all these promises of how his seed is going to be numerous, etc., etc., and they're going to possess this land, this territory. For Sarai,
So,
go ahead, please.
I'm just saying, at this point, Ishmael had not been born.
Correct. Ishmael had not been born, and that's interesting, right?
And it's also interesting that the seed of Abraham doesn't include all the seed of Abraham, but I mean, the three Abrahamic faiths all consider themselves to be children of Abraham. And in fact, scripturally and theologically, they view the promise differently, but in my opinion, it would be good if we all had a more open and sharing and hospitable attitude towards the land.
I agree. Lauren, I couldn't agree more. I agree. And what's coming out here, on a sense, is that it would appear that there's some, at least at this stage of things, maybe we're going to read a little later on, because it does talk about Abram sending these people off, okay? But nevertheless, they're part of a family. And of course, what's happening now is this family is destroying each other. And it's just tragic. It is.
I mean, I understand the feeling of being defensive and angry and traumatized and digging in and us versus them and all of that. I understand it. I understand a lot of where it comes from, but on the other hand, I also understand that attitude doesn't have to happen in response to trauma, that there are things that you can do to overcome that attitude and have a more attitude of peace and fraternity.
Right. I agree. And you can either see the Torah as actually promoting that, or you can use the Torah as an excuse to dig in further. And I think it's tragic because, again, where does the Torah start? It starts with saying that human beings were created in the divine image. And it doesn't say only Jews were created in the divine image, only Muslims were created in the divine image, it doesn't. It says human beings.
Well, it kind of like when it's, I mean, it's hard for me to tell if these listing these nations here is partly intentionally excluding some of the seed of Abraham, like such as Edom.
Okay, no, this is not. Yeah, you're right. I mean, Edom, that would be, and that's only in the future, right? It's not now, not at least even according to the Rashi, it is not. I mean, that is a rabbinic interpretation. What exactly that's going to be in the future is interesting. The truth is that, again, something that I feel Genesis really brings out is that character is more important than blood. That how we behave is the most important thing. And if we act as loving and generous, and that's more important than our blood, how we were descended, etc. So
And people think they're being loving when they're loving their own kind so
yeah,
much that they
really,
see the other people as needing to be vanquished.
yeah, right. But at least within this context, it would appear that these nations, these 7 nations, and this point is made, and it is a universal, it's a universally applicable point, which is that we're going to see references to saying that these people, in fact, we already had one which said, the sin of the Amorite is not yet complete, that there is a point at which divine justice is going to, manifest itself. And these people had acted in, at least we have to take it on faith, that according to the Torah, these people had used up all, they'd acted in such terrible ways that God was ready to say goodbye, but the point was, this was going to happen to the Jewish people too. If the Jewish people acted in a corrupt way and in a way, an ungodly way, this would happen to them as well. And of course, guess what? It did happen.
But supposedly then if there's 36 righteous people, it won't be completely destroyed. And in every group of people, it's not, there's no inherently evil people where every person is born and remains evil. It's
So
just not natural.
that it isn't something that you and I could, sort of deny. On the other hand, we have the stories of the 5 cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim, and Zoar, and Abram's trying to find, at least 2 righteous people in each one of those cities, and they can't do.
Children don't count.
Sadly, they don't. Children don't count in this case because they don't really have a choice in this.
Well, see, this is, what we were talking about before, how Torah is almost anything that I would consider evil can be justified by somebody looking at scripture.
Yeah.
And, it bothers the heck out of me. And I mean, it kind of increases my interest in Torah study, not decreases it, but I can understand why people give up on religion and consider it hateful because it's just so easy to justify things like enslavement and genocide and us versus them attitudes and
I agree.
draconian punishments and collective guilt and all that.
Right. But there's so much to this. And of course, there's also the oral Torah, some of which is, incredibly progressive for the time and basically has all kinds of protections against capital punishment. It's a problem when one makes up one's mind over something or judges something without having all the information, needed, and to try and contextualize things in a way that doesn't justify, things that are cruel, etc., etc.
But you're dealing with humanity and difficult texts, and to put them together and expect everybody to be able to contextualize, it's built into it that people are driven away.
Well, it's that
Their inability to contextualize at the very.
I think, though, I would have to say that that's something under our own control. In other words, I would sort of accept this as part of trying to think of the right word. I never can think of it. It's a Buddhist concept of detachment, that the realization that there's the facts, there's the phenomena, and then there's how I choose to react to the phenomena. Well, I can't change the phenomena, or at least my ability to change the phenomena is very, very limited. But my ability to change how I react to the phenomena is something that I can develop.
And you and I are trying to develop that, but I'm talking about humanity, and there's a lot of limitations to a lot of people, and not everybody even understands that concept, much less understands how to be on a path to develop that or has access to that path. I mean, it may be ruby slippers that if everybody understood that they had them on and could use them, but they don't. They don't understand.
Yeah, so I guess, and we'll have to stop in a second, to what degree is there something within all of us that recognizes this to some extent, or if we allow our emotions to totally control our behavior, to what degree. And you're right. I mean, I'm not trying to actually argue with you over this. It is complicated, but either we are responsible, and we are responsible for our behavior, and we are responsible for our attitudes, etc. And yes, I like to say an explanation isn't an excuse. Okay, so I'm with you. I can understand why people can feel hurt or angry or whatever. Okay, but it's not an excuse for that behavior. And somehow coming down to being mindful is very important. But again, I hear what you're saying, and that is, where training is so important. It becomes really important for the society. So we're going to have to stop here, and I know I haven't, this is hardly a great place to stop, but nevertheless, I am going to have to. So I could wish Shabbat Shalom to people, and I'm definitely worth thinking this through. Oh, sorry. 1 second here.